Harihi Om. Om Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Tat Purushaya Vitmahe. Vakratundhaya Dhimahi. Dhanno Dhandip Prachodhaya. Om Gajananam Mahakayam Viknarajam Vinayagam Vishvesham Vishvashaksham Ganeshayam Namo Namaha. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Gurave Sarvalokanam Bisaje Bhavaroginaha Nidaye Sarva Vidyanam Sri Dakshinamurthaye Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Sai Svararpanamastu. Yogena Chittasya Padena Vacham Mayam Sarirasya Cha Vaidyakena Yopakarotam Pravaram Muninam Pathanjalim Pranjalinanatosmi. Abahu Purushakaram Shankhachakrasidharinam Sahasrasirisham Shvetam Pranamami Patanjalim. Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Yogishwararpanamastu. Let us bow before the noblest of saints, Maharishi Patanjali, who has given us yoga for serenity and sanctity of the mind, grammar and clarity and purity of speech, and medicine for perfection of health, including perfection of the mind. Patanjali is, as I've said before, an incarnation of Adishesha. Half his lower body is in the form of a human and half is in the form of the Adishesha, right? So we continue on our journey into the Yoga Sutras. So far, we've covered in 6 weeks 70 sutras out of the 196 sutras. Today, we go on to verses 71 to 84. And as you know, last week we moved into the second book of Sadhana Pada. Today, we continue in that. Verse 20. If you remember last week, I was talking about perceiver, perception, what is perceived, and how that which is perceived dictates the perception. So there's a difference here between the perceiver and what is perceived. And in between, whether you are still entrenched in the Karma Kanda stage or whether you have slightly evolved to the Jnana Kanda stage will determine, right, the character of what you perceive. And that character basically becomes that which is perceived. So in verse 20, Maharishi Patanjali is saying, Drishtha, Drishimatha, Shuddha, Abhi Pratyayurupasyaha. Right? Drishtha, Drishi, Matraha, Shuddha, Abhi pratyaya anupashyaha, right? That means drishta means the perceiver. Drishi means that which is perceived or the conscious visual, right? Matra means to that which, to that extent, the boundaries. Shuddha, shuddhi is purity. Pratyaya means your convictions, right? Your belief, right? Your convictions. Anupashyaha means after you see what happens. So a translation of that is basically the perceiver is the pure extent of his own consciousness. But his conviction, listen to this carefully, his conviction is patterned by what is perceived. So, as I said earlier, there is a clear, conscious element or consciousness element to the perceiver, But most of what is perceived becomes the perceiver because of the absence of the jnana or wisdom. And this is exactly what he is saying, right? See, drishta means the perceiver. Drishi means that which is perceived. So drishta, drishi means the consciousness of what is perceived emanates from the very individual self. It doesn't come from anywhere else, right? It comes from the individual self. It is itself and that self alone. But owing to the absorbent nature of the self, which is so entrenched in the material world, that self loses track of its own self and instead adopts the patterns from which its consciousness become formed. And on that formation of consciousness, the daily activities, your karma kandas, continue. So unless you change that which is visualized to a higher state of consciousness, then things are not going to change. Because that's your matraha. Drishtha, drishi matraha. To that extent only you can survive in, conducting that consciousness, whether you keep it at a lower self or whether you raise it to a higher self. So the more you see and the more you, converse with that on a very mundane basis, that to that extent you will live. You won't, he's saying you will not evolve beyond that. Drishti, drishimatraha. So change when you see, don't automatically judge, don't automatically define, don't automatically coin or formate your thoughts according to what you see. See beyond that which is seen and you will see that which cannot be seen. So the choice is ours, right? He's very clearly telling that. So in the next verse, he goes on to say, Thadartha eva drishyasya atmaha. See, the individual spirit, Thadartha eva drishyasya atmaha. He's saying the individual spirit who is involved in what is seen only exists for that purpose. That's why I say drishtha drishimatraha. Here he's saying tadartha eva drisyasya atmaha. For that purpose, what you see, if you only appreciate that which you see and you do not go any further, then your spirit does not evolve. It only gets involved with what it sees and it exists for that purpose only. Right? You see, as it is, right? As it is. As we experience what we see or what we hear from others, verily, what you see, you appreciate in one way or another. What you hear, you appreciate in one way or another. But what you speak, others will appreciate in one way or another. So it's completely different. So sight and hearing, two things he's talking about here. Either we see and we experience, or we feel and we experience, or we hear from others and we experience. If someone comes and tells you a very happy story, you will feel happy because your experience of the other person's extent of experience is resulting in happiness in yourself. On the same point, if that person comes and tells you a very short story, very sad story, automatically your psyche changes. Psychologically, you become sad. You partake in that. You sympathize. Unless you have had the same loss, then you can empathize. But here he's saying, as we experience it in ourselves, either from sight or from hearing, this experience is meant to educate us. But what we do, we get so caught up in just living in that experience that we forget to come out of it so that we can experience the higher, right? So your own transmigration, right? You see, a person transmigrates perceiving this or perceiving that in the material world. If you keep perceiving this and that, and your perception is only limited to the material world, then your existence is reduced to materialism. You'll never get out of it. Tadartha eva drishyasya atmaha. That's what he's saying. You will not get out of that. That becomes your very life. Right? Second verse. The third verse, he goes on. This is verse 22. He's saying, Tadartham pratinastham api anastham tathanya sadharanatvat. Sadharanatvat. Krithartham means that which is done for a particular thing, right? Prati, towards. Nashtam is nashti, destroyed or becomes non-existent or completely dissolved. Api means but, although, or even though, or notwithstanding. Anastam is not finished. Nastam is finished, anastam is not finished. Tat anya sadharanatvat. Right? It will still exist in others because that is the common purpose. So, translation means it is not effective for one to whom its purpose is fulfilled, but it has a common effect on others. So if what you see and what you feel and what you are relates to others, that your purpose does not go beyond that which is caught, to where all others are caught. So basically, it's talking about vairagya, where you must detach, right? The material world loses its effectiveness in a realized yogi, right? For him, his purpose is fulfilled. The material world no longer operates on him, no longer is of any material relevance to him. He no longer reacts to it like others do. Whether it rains or whether it shines, he is there for a specific purpose, and that purpose is all he focuses on. If its sun is shining and he's sitting under the tree, that's fine. If it rains, he'll continue to sit under the tree. He does not run and look for shelter because he's beyond the body. Yoga, as I said to you, and I keep saying to you throughout these weeks, is all about mind, body, and spirit. Only when your mind has reached that pinnacle of beyond body stage, then the body becomes disciplined according to the dictates of the mind. And automatically the spirit is called and said, do this, do that, do this, do that, go here, go there. That's a realized yogi, right? Whether he wears a single loincloth or whether he wears, a dhoti or whether he wears a shawl, it is immaterial to him. Because others will see and say, oh my God, he's not wearing any clothes. For him, he's beyond the body. So it really doesn't matter. But people get so entangled and so engrossed and so caught up in what others would think, what others would say. So they're continuously pulled into the karmakanda stage. So there is no such thing as mass liberation, yeah? 20, 30 of you come and sit, in a yoga class. Whoever is teaching, doesn't have to be me, whoever is teaching, right? Not everybody will get the same lesson. Although the lesson is the same, not everybody will get the full fruits of those lessons. Maybe 1%. So if you're talking about liberation, not everybody who hears and sees the same thing, coming back to who hears and sees the same thing gets that liberation. See, the perceiver and that which is perceived, two different things, right? For example, if you go to the mandir or you go to the temple, right? I want you to be honest with yourselves. When you see, right, the Murti in the Sanctum Sanctorium or in the Garbhagraha or Mulasthanam, what is your thought? Because you are the perceiver and your perception is whoever. Shiva, it could be a Shivalinga, it could be Lord Narayana, it could be Lord Ganesh, it could be Lord, Subramanya, could be Mother Durga, Mother Gayatri, Mother Lakshmi, Rama, Sita, Lakshmana, Hanuman. What is your perception? As a perceiver, there is no limit, but the perception is limited. So what do you perceive? You see a stone which is decorated with flowers, garlands, silk cloth, whatever. To that extent, and only to that extent, your spiritual liberation exists. It doesn't go beyond that. But if you look at the stone and then at some point you stop looking at the stone, right? Basically, the stone is powerless. The stone is powerless. It is just meant to be a means to the end. It is not the end, my dear brothers and sisters. You see the stone, you see the stone, you see Vishnu, you see Vishnu, you see Vishnu, you see Vishnu. At some point, you stop seeing Vishnu. You go beyond. Then you can reach Vaikuntha. Otherwise, you're continuously in a geographical location, standing there looking at the stone, which is called Vishnu. Standing there looking at the stone, which is called Shivalinga. Aham tat, tat tvam asi, aham brahma asmi. How will you realize that if your perception is limited to a stone in front of you? The stone is telling you, don't look at me, look beyond me. You cannot get that lesson. That is where you will be stuck. And you will be stuck for a long time. No one can come and release you. No one can do it. No one has the power to do it except you yourself. And set it free. To do the right thing. You see, when I did Bhagavad Gita with you, I said to you what Krishna told Arjuna. He said, it doesn't matter who you are. Just because you pray to me does not mean you get liberation. He's saying, Manushyanam sahasreshu. There are thousands of human beings. Kaschit yatati siddhaye. Everybody is seeking for that perfection, that spiritual liberation, which is perfection. Yathatham api siddhanam. Of those who endeavor. Kaschinma veti tatpataha. Only those who see beyond me will merge with me. That means he's saying, if you see only me and my figure, you get nowhere. If you go beyond me, then you merge with the entire me, that is the entire cosmos, the entire universalness. Krishna said this in the Gita. Chapter 7, if you go and read, you will find this there. Right? Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye yathatham api siddhanam kaschinmam veti tatpataha. Or even there are hundreds and thousands of people, and some of them are great yogis. If they only see me, then they don't realize the truth that I am the universe. They see beyond that physical me. Then they merge with that truth. How much more can be said about who you really are? But you don't look for yourself within yourself. You always look for something outside. How will you find what is inside if you keep looking outside? That thought process must change. So go within. Go within means you don't see anything outside, but I've got two eyes. Okay, so close your eyes. That is why in meditation they say close the eyes. But you close your physical eyes, you open your mental eyes and see everything and even more. When they say close your eyes, it just does not mean your physical eyes. It means your mental eye. no sound, right? Anyway, the next verse, he's talking about, conviction and the conjunction of perception between the convictor and the conviction, right? Very interesting, once you follow the flow of the language, you really get sucked into it. And you think, wow, it's like poetry in motion, poetry in motion. And it's continuous motion of uninterrupted sequence. Such fantastic sequence, never losing touch. As I said, it's one huge garland and every bead has its own characteristic, woven beautifully and intricately one to another to form this beautiful mala called Yoga Sutras. Swaswami Shaktyo Swarupa Upalabdhi Hetu Samyogaha. Swami Shaktyo Swarupa Upalabdhi Hetu Samyogaha. Right? Swa means yourself, right? Your own self. Swami means the master or the guru, right? But you are Swa, and within you is the Swami, the master, the individual self, the true master, right? Shaktyo means the power, right? Swarupa, your real form, right? Upalabdhi means the more you live, the more you experience. So upalabdhi means getting the experience through living. Hetu samyogaha means the cause or the reason of a certain conjunction. So the translation is, there is a reason for the conjunction of the individual self and his own psychological energies. It is for obtaining the experience of his own form, right? So he's saying, you have your individual self, you have your mind, right? Manas, you have your chitta, your thoughts, and you have your buddhi, your intelligence. You have to use all of these to get an experience from your own form to the formless within. So he's saying here, basically what he's saying is, the living entity, right? Any living entity who has a psychological makeup can only realize his true essence or spiritual nature by coming into contact with that subtleness, with that internal energy, right? That is why when they say, whenever you have a problem, close your eyes and pray to God. Pray to that inner energy. So that inner energy connects with the outer energy, and collectively they will create something to address the problem. That is getting the experience, right? And whenever you go to any gurus or masters or, anyone with Siddhic powers, when they look at you, sometimes they don't look at you, they close your eyes, right? Many times, consciously or unconsciously, I find myself doing that. I just close my eyes and then you see far more than what your visual eyes can see. That is the power of submitting your subconscious to the superconscious. If you keep living in the conscious, you will not transmigrate to the subconscious. If you don't transmigrate to the subconscious, you will never connect to the superconscious. Therefore, in this verse, Maharishi Patanjali is saying, connect to your internal subtle energies. This is the conjunction, samyoga, the union between the outer and the inner. So every time you try and connect inwards, right? A lot of you say the Gayatri mantra for intelligence. That's fine. But don't say it outwardly. You should say it internally. Many times I have said in my talks how the Gayatri should be perceived, right? So if you have the form of Gayatri Devi, for example, right? Panchamukhi, the 5 heads, right? In your mind's eye, at the very center here, she should be looking inside, not outside. She should be looking inwards. And then if you bring that figure down to your heart chakra, into your anahata, she should be looking outward. So outward and inward, right? And the chanting should bounce between these two. That increases your own intelligence and enables you to connect to your own subtle energies far more effectively than if you just with 108 malas, Om Bhurva Swaha, Om Bhurva Swaha, Om Bhurva Swaha, like that. Right? That is internalization. Energy is far more powerful. You can try it. And you can tell me, brother, that is so true. Or you can tell me, brother, that it is not working for me. It's not working for me, right? You and only you have the power to develop your own psychological energies. Swami Shaktyo Swarupa. My true self, the power to develop that Swarupa is within me. So that is what he's saying in verse 23. Right? And then 24. If you don't get it, he's also telling you why. Tasya hetu avidyaha. Fantastic. He's saying you and only you have the power and the energy and the Shakti to realize your inner true self. But I can't. That means he said, Tasya hetu avidyaha. He's saying the cause of this non-realization is spiritual ignorance. How fantastic. He gives you a way, and then he knows there are some people who will come and say, I can't find it, it's not working, I am not getting it. He said the very reason for this, the cause of this conjunction or non-commitment or non-conviction is spiritual ignorance. Tasya hetu avidyaha. Avidya. Vidya, if it is, knowledge, avidya is ignorance. Right? The underlying reason is the spiritual ignorance. If you cannot see God in anyone, you will never see God in you. If you see God in everyone, you will realize that you are God yourself very soon. Or at least that God, that energy is within you. Right? From a very practical point of view. Are you saying that inside of you there is Rama, there is Krishna, there is Narayana, there is Shiva, there is Buddha? All of them are staying inside? How big is that space for all of them to reside? These are all, as I keep saying, they are means to an end. If you only focus on the means, you will never get to the end. If you use the means constructively and practically, they are just a means. You will get to the end. So don't get so embroiled in the karma kandas, so much so that your jnana kanda is suppressed completely and is completely subsumed by the activities of the karma kanda. Very interestingly, Ramana Maharishi, once someone went to see him, right? And they went to the temple. And, this is obviously a rich person. So he brought all the, trays of fruits, milk, cloth, some items of gold, everything, and offered it to, Ramana Maharishi placed to Mata Kali, right? Giving it to Mother Kali. And then from the temple he came. Ramana Maharishi was in, obviously, deep meditation, as he always is. And he doesn't open his eyes. He's talking to this gentleman and his wife. And he said, yes, I can see you have come. What have you brought? He said, oh, Swamiji, I have brought a tray of, all the most expensive fruits. Or, I brought one sari for her. I brought her a gold bracelet, gold chain. Everything I have brought for Mata. And Ramana Maharishi just laughed. And he said, really? Did Mother ask you for all these things? Number one. Number two, you have brought it for her. Is she going to use those things? Or is it going to be, be used for humans, for service and whatnot? Obviously, they will tie the sari and then they will auction it off. because they want to raise funds. And then from the funds, they will do service. I mean, that is what they're supposed to do in temples, right? It is not how rich a temple is. It's how rich a temple is in its conducting of service activities, in its feeding, in its annadhanam, in its vidyadhanam, in its vastradhanam. That is how rich a temple is. Not I've got, crores and crores of money stashed away. So Ramana Maharshi said, what you give to God cannot be measured in physical terms. Listen to this very carefully. Yeah? This is what spiritual ignorance is. Just because you go and give, 12 liters of milk, gone. Your entire karma palan is gone. Go and feed 4 people. Even if no one gives milk to the temple, you mean to say the temple authorities will not conduct Abhishekam because no one has given milk? No, be realistic. You mean to say nothing will happen in the temple because nobody is going to the temple? That will still happen. It is not in your hands. It is not functioning because you are giving milk, you are giving fruits, you are giving things. It will still function with or without you. That is the difference between the perceiver and the perception. You perceive and you think, oh, I have given, so they are doing. Ramana Maharshi said, no. What the human gives in the form of things will only serve another human being. It will not serve God. So what can you give God? That which cannot be perceived, that which cannot be measured. So the man was asking, Ramana Maharshi, what? I don't understand. He said, give kindness. Can you measure kindness? No. Give compassion. Can you measure compassion? No. Give love. Can you measure love? No. Give that. Not your trace. Because that is not what Mata wants. Fantastic. Do dhana, do dharma. But make sure you know. Make sure you realize the utility of what you're doing, the functionality of what you're doing or what you're giving. Whether it reaches one, or it reaches the many, or it reaches the needy. That is the true relationship you build between your Swa and Swarupa. Right? Because once you start to eliminate that sort of limited perception, then he talks in verse 25, he's saying, Tat abhavat samyoga abhavaha hanam tadresha kaivalyam. Tad, that spiritual ignorance. Abhavat, resulting from the elimination of what you see or the limitations of what you see, right? Hanam is withdrawal. Tadrase, withdrawal of the person who perceives, the perceiver. Kaivalyam. Kaivalyam means total separation from any base mentality or mundane psychology. So translated, it basically means the elimination of the conjunction. The elimination of the conjunction which results from the elimination of spiritual ignorance. The elimination of the conjunction that results from the elimination of the spiritual ignorance. What is it? Is the withdrawal. Withdrawal of what? The total separation of the perceiver and that which is perceived, which puts those limitations. So he says mundane psychology or base mentality. Move away from that. Move away from that. And nobody has to know the good that you do. But everybody will come to know the bad that you have done. Because the good registers with nature just like that. Nature just takes it into account. 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 + 1. The bad is accountable in this Bhuloka. Remember, I said many times, this is Kali Yuga. So you may not have to take a rebirth, right, to exhaust your karmas accumulated in this life. In this very life itself, you will start to exhaust them, right? And if there are residues, then you will take the next birth to complete that. There is no escape, right? Doesn't matter whether you are Rama or Krishna or Buddha or Jesus. Everybody is subject to it, right? That is why it is one law of universal applicability from which no one is exempt, except those who have shown such characteristics, like Hanuman, right? Is beyond the effect of karmic consequences. Like Ganesha is beyond. That's why these two deities are often worshipped, right, in conjunction one another. Right? Okay. The next one he talks about, okay, Swami, you are talking about, or Swamiji, or, Maharishi, you are talking about spiritual ignorance. How do we get out of it? What is the method for avoiding this spiritual ignorance? And throw some light on that. He's saying, Vivekhyati, Viveka means discrimination. Vivekhyati, Aviplava, Hanopayaha. Viveka is discrimination. Khyati is insight. Aviplava means it is continuous, not broken, right? Not. Hanopaya means Hana, and Upaya means avoidance or method. So basically, when you translate it, the method for avoiding spiritual ignorance is the establishment of continuous discrimination. Wow, fantastic. He's already giving you the answer now. Right? Vivekhyati, Vivekakhyati, Vivekakhyati. Vivekhyati is discriminative insight. That you will only get through deeper and higher practice of yoga. When you move away from the visual perceptions and go away to spiritual perceptions, then you are slowly inculcating that continuous discriminative insight. And when that starts to vibrate within you, you will start to levitate into the higher levels of spiritual evolution. Right? That's why he's telling, once you have this continuous discrimination, right? Vivekhyati. Then you will go to the next stage. Tasya saptada pranthabhumi prajnaha. He's telling in verse 27. Tasya saptadaha pranthabhumi prajnaha. Basically, he's saying, concerning the development of this discriminative insight, there are 7 stages. Tasya, this. Saptadaha. Prantabhumi means 7 stages. Prajna means insight. Right? So what are these 7 stages? Now, here Patanjali is going really deep now, right? So you got to pay attention. He's saying, what is discriminative insight? He's saying discriminative insight can only be developed when you follow the 7 stages. What 7 stages are these? These are called the 7 stages of jnana, 7 stages of knowledge, right? The first stage is subhecha, not subiksha. Subiksha is different. This is subhecha. Then you call vicharana. Then you call tanumanasana, sattvapati, asamshakti, padartha bhavana, and samadhi. 7 stages of knowledge. But this discriminative insight that he's talking about, right? That is in the first stage of the 7 stages of knowledge, which is subhecha. Subhecha. Subhecha means the longing for the truth. And truth here is not, whether something you say is right or wrong. The truth here is the real truth. Tat tvam asi. Aham brahmasmi. That is the truth. I want to realize I am God. I want to realize I am God. I want to realize I am God. That longing, that passion which pulls you towards that despite a storm of ignorance, just continuously pulls you. That is subhecha. the longing for the truth. Now, in Subhecha, if you want to master the first stage, which is first stage of knowledge, right, which is Subhecha, there are 4 qualifications you need in order to transgress the first stage of knowledge, which is Subhecha. What are those 4? The first one is Viveka, discrimination. Then Vairagya, detachment, right? Or determination. Third one is Shat Sampati. Shat Sampati means mastery of the 6 senses. I've covered this Shat Sampati in my reflections, seasons 2, right? Every Thursday, I covered Shat Sampati some time back. And finally, the 4th one is Mumukshatva. So in Subhecha, there are 4 stages. The first one is Viveka, discrimination. Second one is Vairagya, detachment or determination. Third one is Shat Sampati, mastery over the 6 senses. And the 4th one is Mumukshatva, deep desire for liberation. How it's connected to the first one, Subhecha, which is longing for the truth. Then only you can be saying this is how you develop it. Then you go to stage 2. What is stage 2? I told you earlier, Vicharana. Right? Remember I said before you speak, 3 V's must already be activated. The first V is Viveka. First V is Vicharana. Then Viveka. Then Vak. Inquiry, discrimination, speech. So in the 7 stages of knowledge, the first one is Subhecha, where Viveka comes in. The second stage is Vicharana, right inquiry. The third stage is Tanumanasana, that is bringing the focus to the one. The 4th stage of knowledge is Sattvapati, attainment of purity. 5th stage of knowledge is Asam Shakti, the ultimate victory. And the 6th stage is Pathartha Bhavana, Pathartha Bhavana, that is seeing the truth beyond Maya, going beyond illusion, going beyond illusion. Then only you have conquered the 6 stages, so the 7th stage of Samadhi is fine. Right? I'm not talking about the yogasanas, right? The 8 Ashta yogas. I'm talking Ashtanga yoga. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the 7 stages of knowledge. Okay? And that's what he's talking in verse 27. So how do you develop that? He's giving you the answer. He's saying, Yoga Anga Anushastanat Ashuddhikshaye Jnanadipti Avivekakyatehe. He's saying from the consistent practice of the different parts of yoga. Now he's talking about the Ashtanga yoga, right? He's saying from the elimination of impurity, this will slowly sharpen and make it more radiant. Make what more radiant? The organ of perception, so much so that it becomes manifest, and that manifestation will illumine with discriminative insight. Oh, beautifully he's saying it. Yoganga Anushtanat, right? Ashuddhikshaye Jnanadipti Avivekakyate. There is really no shortcut. You have to do this, right? And 29, he explains, what is it? What are the 8 stages? Again, he's telling Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhya, Astau Anga. Right? Astau Angani, he says. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhya, Astau Angani. So he's talking about each one of this being the 8 stages of Ashtanga Yoga. Saying moral restraints, right? Recommended behaviors. That is niyama. And asana, body postures. Pranayama, regulation of breathing. Pratyahara, withdrawal of the senses. Dharana, linking to the attention or higher concentration. Dharana is more important than dhyana because the more effective your dharana is, the more easier your dhyana becomes. So dhyana is effortless linkage to that attention of the higher consciousness. Once you're there, then the 8 stages emergence. You merge with that one, right? So the first thing you must do is that yama, then niyama, then asana, then pranayama, pratyahara. So when you go straight to dhyana, that means you have mastered the 6 stages before that. So check yourself. You know, if you can't sit still for 5 minutes, then you haven't even mastered asana. You're still thinking about food or sleep, then you haven't mastered yama or niyama. No point sitting in dhyana, right? Because nothing is going to happen. In verse 30, it talks about what is yama. So I said it is, it is so surgically constructed, each verse that connects to one another. A question, answer, problem, then question, answer, problem, then the question, answer to the problem is given. Each time, every time, all the time. Ahimsa satya asteya brahmacharya aparahi graha yamaha. Ahimsa is non-violence. Satya is the truth. Asteya is, non-stealing, as opposed to steya. Brahmacharya, you know what is brahmacharya. Aparigraha means this is not mine. Every time something happens, not my will, it's his will. Non-possessiveness of anything, right? Non-possessiveness. Because what was never yours is yours today. What is yours today may belong to someone else tomorrow. Certainly after your time. So how can you claim that it is yours? If it is yours, means it should be born with you, it should die with you. So your hands are yours, your legs are yours, your eyes are yours, your ears are yours, your mouth is yours, your brain is yours, your thoughts are yours. Nothing else. He wants you to think inwardly, insightfully, not externally and extrovertedly. Right? So must change your thinking. Otherwise you get caught. What do you get caught in? He's telling you in verse 31. He's saying to you, Jati, Deshaha, Kala, Samaya, Anavachinna, Sarvabhauma Mahapratham. Jati, status, you get caught in this. Right? Desha is location. This is my country, this is my place, my village, my gaon, all this. Kala, time, you get caught in time. Samaya, you get caught in condition, right? Anavachinnaha means you're not restrained. That means you adjust everything, you keep adjusting. This doesn't work, that doesn't work, this doesn't work, that. Sarvabhauma means relating to everything, the whole world. Mahavratam means it's a great commitment. So the understanding of what this means is the moral restraints. He's still talking about yama. The moral restraints are not to be adjusted by jati, status, desha, location, kala, time, samaya, condition, right? They can only be changed or attained according to the stages of yoga. And for that, you need mahavratam, great commitment. Right? So just because you change your posture or you change your place of meditation from one room to another room or from one place to another place, or you go to somewhere else and sit, right? The moral restraints have no bearing on where you are, what time you are, what condition you are in, what circumstances you are in, what time you are in. No. They can only relate if you go through the 8 stages. From one to the other, to the other, to the next, to the next, to the next, so on and so forth. Right? And then he's talking about niyama. Only when you master yama, he says you can go to niyama. In verse 32, he's telling saucha, santoshaha, tapa, swadhyaya, ishvara pranidhanani niyamaha. Purification, saucha. Contentment, santosha. Tapa, austerity. Swadhyaya, religious study or religious meditation. Ishvara pranidhani. Right? Meditation on the Supreme Lord. Niyamaha. That means this is the recommended behavior. How fantastic is that? First, he's telling you what you should get rid of. Then he's telling you what you should focus on in order for you to go to the next stage. If you haven't mastered yama and niyama, Don't go and learn poses in asana. Because there's no point contouring the body when the mind is not adjusted. What's the point? You can do Padmasana, you can do Vajrasana, you can do Bhadrasana, but mind is still in Naraka Loka. And what's the point? You know, there's no point buying or possessing an astronaut suit when you don't have access to an aircraft that can take you to space. That aircraft that can take you to the space is your mind. So what's the point of having the outfit? You can wear it, but you're not going anywhere. That's why he said, whether you wear it, you don't wear it, where you are, under what condition you are, what jati you belong to, that's not going to change anything. You need that aircraft. And that aircraft is your mind. Mind, body, spirit. That is yoga. Right? Devotion to God cannot come in any other way. And again, you know, Krishna said something to Arjuna in, I think, chapter 5. Chapter 4 was chapter 5. He's saying, Kayena, Manassa, Buddhyaya, Kevalar Indhyayarapi, Yogina Karma Kurvanti, Sangam Tyaktatma Siddhaye, saying with the body, mind, intelligence, even with the senses alone, Kevalam Indriyayarapi. Even the yogis having discarded attachment, Sangam Tyaktatma Siddhaye, they will not be purified unless they also detach from performing karma kanda actions. Self will not be purified if it keeps doing, you know. That's why you see when the yogis and the sadhus, they meditate without the limitation of time. So they don't think, you know, 4 o'clock I have to have tea, 6 o'clock I have to shower, 7 o'clock I have to do puja, 8 o'clock I have to read a story to my kid. All that is gone. They're beyond all that. And the body, by its own discipline, becomes purified. There's only one thing that the body is attending to all the time. Merge. Ishvara pranidhanani. That is exactly what it means. Vitharka bhadane pratipaksha bhavanam. The next verse is telling. Vitharka, without doubt or without argument. Bhadane, without being disturbed. Pratipaksha bhavanam means that which can manifest this way or that way. Right? Basically, in the case of annoyance that is produced by doubts, one should conceive of what is opposite. Remember what I said to you last week or the week before. He said, reverse your thinking. Now he's coming back. In the case of annoyance, suddenly you're doing something and another doubt comes in, right? He's saying, think the opposite. Not the doubt, but the opposite of the doubt in order to get over that problem, right? This is how you get over the moral restraints. I mean, nothing can be more direct and perceptive based than this. Whenever you have a doubt, instead of focusing on the doubt, Patanjali is saying, focus on the opposite. You'll get your answer, right? So try it. Unless you try it, you're not going to, you know, they say no venture, no gain. If you don't try something, you're not going to learn anything, you know. So whenever there is a problem, he's saying, don't look at the problem, look at the opposite. That means what it is saying do, you don't. What it is saying you don't do, you do. That is the opposite. It's called reversal. You know, sometimes in the language of psychology, it's called reverse psychology. Okay. So that is verses, you know, I think up to, what verses have we covered? We have covered so many. 71 to 84. Today, what we've covered is 71 to 84. Now, in the usual style, before I end, I always give you a mudra. So today's mudra is something called Kubera mudra. Right? What is Kubera mudra? Kubera, as you know, is the god of wealth. So the secondary objective of this mudra is to attract. You must understand one thing, just because you do a mudra doesn't mean you get it. Mentally, you must attract. This is called the law of attraction, you know. So your thoughts must first attract it from the conscious level to a subconscious level. Then only the subconscious will go to superconscious and say, send. If only at a conscious level, there is no connection between subconscious and superconscious, whatever you want, you will not get because there is no connection there. So this mudra called Kubera mudra is basically to attract wealth and prosperity. As I said, that is the secondary aim. What is the primary aim? Right? The primary aim of practicing the Kubera mudra is to increase your patience and confidence. That's what you need for your true self. For the external self, yes, you need wealth. So you have to decide what you want. This is what I mean, the perceiver and that which is perceived. Two different things. Huh? Just because you perceive does not mean you are perceiving something that you see or don't see. Normally, the perceiver and the perception is deemed to be the same. Patanjali is saying, no, you have something in between called discrimination to separate the perceiver from that which is perceived. So Kubera mudra, if this is your hand, your last two fingers, you know, these last two fingers must bend and touch this mount here under your thumb. Okay, once they touch your thumb, then these two fingers will merge with the Paramatman, like this. Can you see? These are all, you know, sensitive points, so they must touch your thumb like that. So these two come here, and these three fingers joint. This is called Kubera mudra, right? So you do it in both your hands. You meditate 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening, right? I'll say when you wake up and when you go to bed, very easy. Because otherwise you think, oh, I have to now put 10 minutes extra in my day to facilitate this process. Whatever your investment, that's what your derivations are going to be. If you don't put money, you're not going to get interest. So if you don't invest in your own spiritual evolution, you will be continuously stuck in your spiritual ignorance. Avidyaha. This is what it means, right? Anyada sharanam nasti tvameva sharanam mamaha tasmat karunya bhavena raksha raksha. Narayana. Om Tat Sat. Om Tat Sat.